Ladies and gentlemen, RosterWatch Nation, welcome back to the epic RosterWatch Podcast, brought to you by RosterWatch.com. My name is Alex Dunlap here, back with Byron Lambert, who's been busy with a bunch of behind-the-scenes RosterWatch business, joining us back on the pod to complain about version 2.6 of the epic cheat sheet available to our pro members at RosterWatch.com. Byron, what the hell's going on, brother?
Out fighting in the streets, slugging it out for RosterWatch Nation, staying busy, getting ready for the holiday, man.
Yeah, it's going to be a big holiday. You have 4th of July plans? I guess I didn't ask you before we came on.
Yeah, I got my girl coming out. We're going to chill. Just take it easy, go to the beach, maybe get on the boat for a little while, see if we can wet a hook.
It sounds exactly like my plans, except I'm not having my girl come out. My girl lives here.
I don't know which arrangement's better. I also, if things don't get totally shut down, there's a very filthy martini that I haven't had in some months now that I'd like to get out and sip on a little bit.
Be careful out in them Florida streets, brother. We got you and I are in similar situations here in Florida and in Texas, but let RosterWatch Nation know that we're being very, very careful, and we're generally pretty socially distanced type of dudes anyway, with the type of shit we like to do. But all right, so let's get to it. Look, I've been running mock drafts to start these off with the cheat sheets, but since you have a bunch of talking points for that, maybe I'll just forego that and let's just talk about the elephant in the room, Cam Newton. I haven't commented on it. You haven't really commented on it that I've seen on Twitter. Just let's talk about it, man. Cam Newton to the New England Patriots.
Yeah, Cam Newton minus 400 to start week 1 for the Patriots. Makes perfect sense. They brought him in to be the starter. And look, I mean, so for me, the obvious question is, where should Cam Newton be drafted? From my perspective, I'm taking Cam Newton right after the Drew Brees, Matt Staffords, Carson Wentz's of the world, and I'm taking him before a guy like Baker Mayfield.
Would you take him before Carson Wentz?
No.
You wouldn't. Okay.
So I think he's in that group. You could read it. You're splitting hairs. As it currently stands, no. I think I take him. I'm looking at Cam Newton after Drew Brees goes off the board, after Stafford goes off the board. Wentz is right in that pocket as well. But I'm looking to take Cam Newton over a guy like Baker Mayfield at this point.
The thing about Cam that I haven't heard anybody talk about that much is the fact that he's getting a downgrade in supporting cast, right? As much as people want to talk about how this could do something good for NKealHarry, I've heard the talk about this is good for James White because look at what he was able to do with elevating Christian McCaffrey in the passing game. Those feel like the kind of, I guess, Julian Edelman is sort of a low average depth of target type of player that, he could, if there is still some sort of accuracy issue having to do with the injuries to the shoulder, because remember, he's coming off a Liz Frank, but he's also coming off 2 separate shoulders, right? So look, if you listen to Dr. David Chow on Twitter, he's acting like this isn't any big deal. Cam's back, just fine. If that's the case, I think that it's not necessary. It wasn't like Tom Brady was hurling the ball downfield a ton last year. And that's one of the reasons that we keep going back and forth about what this means for Mike Evans down in Tampa Bay. What are your thoughts about how Cam Newton compares to Tom Brady as far as the way that he can elevate or the way that he can hurt that surrounding cast around him?
I think it's 2 totally different animals. I do believe he can elevate the cast. A couple of thoughts. NKealHarry and James White were 2 players I wanted to talk to you about the next time I joined the show anyways, and that was before this news. So I definitely think both those guys are good talking points. So kind of the idea that I had in mind previous to this news was, Look, Julian Edelman's already a guy we're kind of low on and not really getting anyways. But in my mind, I wanted to get NKealHarry up a couple spots at late in drafts, get a little more exposure to him, maybe bring Julian Edelman down a couple of spots just so we can get some of the other wide receivers in that area of the cheat sheet that I like a little bit more up. Now, post Cam Newton news, I still like it for NKealHarry. I still think Harry deserves a bump. Edelman, I'm a little bit torn on. To me, Edelman, we were already a little bit low on, and I do think Cam Newton's an improvement for Edelman, likely over Stidham. So maybe we don't tinker with Edelman a whole lot. And then James White was the other guy. I mean, that's a player we've been looking at getting a little bit higher on the sheet. Anyways, look, that's not really how I want to talk about this a little more later from the fallout from the FSGA draft. This is not in accord with the current construction of our rosters, but for those of you who draft on your own system and follow this, or look, undoubtedly these ADPs are going to change. I think this is an interesting talking point. So given our roster constructions now at RosterWatch, we're not even toiling with the James Whites of the world. However, I do think that late in drafts, he has been representing some value and is a guy that deserves a little more attention, and I'd say that Cam Newton's acquisition bolsters that case, Alex.
So, but do you like NKealHarry? Because I think that Cam, we complain about the downfield. We've always complained about the downfield accuracy from Cam, right? I'm not necessarily sure that was a construct that had to do so much with the hurt shoulders. That's kind of had to do. I mean, we've been complaining about how Cam can hit the broadside of a barn past 20 yards downfield for like a long time, right? So I kind of like a guy like NKealHarry who, as he came out, that was like in his class, he was the ultimate go up and go get it, jump ball type of candidate. That feels like a great fit with Cam Newton to me. So if we're going to be moving him up, I recently had kind of made a little bit of a change and a little bit of a decision that if we got to the end of drafts and we were looking at the possibility of possibly getting NKealHarry, I had made the decision after the Deebo Samuel injury news that what if Brandonaiyuk is on the board there for your 14th round selection versus NKealHarry? How do you see that playing out after the Deebo Samuel news? It feels like that the market hasn't really adjusted to the fact that Deebo Samuel's hurt, and it looks like Brandonaiyuk's going to walk into at least something. I mean, I guess it kind of depends on how hurt Jalen Hurd still is. Now that he's coming back. Trent Taylor, we don't know exactly how, but those are some longer shot names. Brandonaiyuk was, there's the top wide receiver on those guys' board and a first round pick. How do you feel about him versus NKealHarry?
I think it's 50-50. I'd probably gamble on NKealHarry personally.
Just because you feel like there's not a George Kittle there. There's
a vacuum of other targets. I think Cam is a solid quarterback option to have in there. NKealHarry was a very good prospect. It's a second year. This is where we expect growth. And who else do they really have? And like you say, I mean, in the past, Gettleman, I mean, they've revamped this strategy here late in Cam Newton's tenure before he left Carolina. But for a while there, they were only drafting big wide receivers because they wanted those big bodies on the outside for him to lay it up to. I think that's what you've got with NKealHarry. He's probably going to be one of the better red zone targets on them. I mean, who's a better red zone target on the team? I guess Edelman you can argue, but really, traditionally it's NKealHarry. So I think you get the touchdown equity. I think you get the second year bump. I like Cam Newton, and the competition's not there. So I think you make a strong argument for both. But hell, maybe we can grab both of them.
Do you like Denzel Mims better than either of those guys at the very end, or should NKealHarry and Brandonaiyuk be ahead of Denzel Mims on the sheet?
I like Mims quite a lot late. I think that's a trio we really got to pay attention to. I'd have Harry atop that, and then I might play ADPs with the other two fellas.
Okay. So I will get that done. Not that big a move for N'Keal. Like we don't have to do much to make sure that we're getting a good bit of him. It really is just it's a matter of, do you want Ayuk or NKealHarry? Because you can have them both right now with your 13th or 14th round pick in 12-team PPR leagues, at least in the simulations that I've been doing. I can pull up the exact ADPs right now. But
those are great guys to get in the final rounds of your draft.
So let's see. So NFL ADP consensus. Let's just look at Fantasy Pros at the ADP consensus here. And I mean, it'll in PPR, it'll play out what I'm saying. I wonder if Harry. So I mean, he has an ADP of 168. Ayuk has an ADP of 169. It's so funny that that's the that's the hair I'm trying to split in my mind, and they literally are one player apart in the 160s.
You just released wide receiver matchups on the season. That's always a good tool to reference when we're looking at splitting these hairs.
Well, did you see Brandon Ayuk's? So Brandon Ayuk, and that's what another thing that our pro members can go look at this. But Brandon Ayuk ended up higher than I would have thought. Let's see the copy of the wide receiver sheet. Brandon Ayuk has the 5th best projected schedule of any wide receiver. That's not bad, right? It's not. I mean, as far as he'll see in his first 3 games, he'll have two second year guys who come with pedigree, but Byron Murphy and DeAndre Baker, none of them were that good last year. Then he'll have a run of 4 pretty tough games based on alignment data that we've collected and just in the analysis we've done. Avonte Maddox, Byron Jones. It looks like he'll have during that time he'll have the Rams, so that'll either be Jalen Ramsey or Troy Hill. He'll get the Patriots. That'll either be Jason McCourty or, of course, Stephon Gilmore. And then he gets Seattle, which is going to be that's either he'll probably get Shaquille Griffin, but they also now have Quentin Dunbar on that roster. But then after that, he'll get Green Bay, so that'll likely be Kevin King. He'll get Janoris Jenkins because Deebo Samuel should be back by then, and you would figure that Marshawn Lattimore would be on Deebo. And then just to end the season, it's just beautiful because he has 2 games with Josh Norman and another one with here he has Josh Norman, he has Ronald Darby, he has Daryl Worley, then he has Byron Murphy again. So an easy start to the schedule, an easy playoff schedule for what we project for Brandon Ayuk. I'll
take the Kyle Shanahan advantage too.
And then let me just also I should mention this too, Byron, that as long as we're talking about these projected wide receiver cornerback week by week matchups, NKealHarry out of the top 75 ADP wide receivers, as you project these things out, has the second worst. Because he'll have Byron Jones, Quentin Dunbar, Prince Amukamara, Travarius Ward, AJ Bouye, bye week, Richard Sherman, Travarius White, Pierre Desir, Marcus Peters, Garyon Conley, Patrick Peterson, Casey Hayward, Jalen Ramsey, Byron Jones again, Tre'Davious White. That's that's a different beat. So Byron, how's he getting Byron Jones? Oh, shit, because Byron Jones is now a Dolphin. I was like, how is he getting him twice? You forget Byron Jones is a Miami Dolphin. Xavier Howard, Byron Jones. Try throwing on those guys next year, man. Miami.
Well, there you have it, live on the show. NKealHarry versus Brandon Ayuk for you guys. That's a good breakdown, Alex.
We definitely did.
Way to split those hairs.
That sure wasn't on any kind of show sheet. Not that show sheets exists around here. What else you got, man?
Right?
What about Sony Michel? What about Sony Michel? Michael Yeager's asking about him. Does this elevate Sony Michel at all? To me, I just don't think about Sony Michel.
Is it malpractice that I don't even think about Sony Michel?
Yeah, I don't know. I like it for James White. I like it for
the guy that I can draft latest. Right now we're talking PPR.
Probably it hurts him.
Yeah, could take some touchdowns away.
Yeah, he's going to take some touchdowns away at the goal line for sure.
I'd agree. So version 2.6 of the Ultimate Draft cheat sheet at RosterWatch is humming very, very nicely, Alex. I'm getting sick results in all of my mock draft simulations. So I want to urge that, we don't change much, but during this time of the year, we're always on the show talking about ADPs, mock drafts, and the cheat sheet. And, one thing I'm very, very pleased with is that we're getting so much Matthew Stafford right now. I've noticed that as ADPs have shifted and as the sheet has moved around a little bit, we've seen the exposure change up to those quarters. That's the tier. That's the pocket we're really targeting, or we have been targeting to date. I like it. I think that's where the value's at in drafts. It just seems to be that Matt Stafford is the guy kind of emerging now. It sounds like we're going to slip Cam Newton somewhere into that tier. And, I think it raises a good point. I mean, you mentioned it earlier, Carson Wentz. I noticed Carson Wentz sits atop Matt Stafford and Drew Brees at this point. I don't have any issues with that. I like Wentz an awful lot, but getting Stafford right now frequently, I thought was very, very satisfying, Alex.
It feels like Wentz, people are starting to catch on a little bit to Wentz too, about just how bad all those receivers were last year. And he's healthy, and they've added on to the offense. And Miles Sanders is going to be in his second year. Desean Jackson will be back, and Jalen Reagor, and it's another year of that connection with Zach Ertz, and you have Dallas Goedert. It's he's got a lot of weapons there. It's a tough hair for me to split between those two guys. I'd be happy. Sometimes in a lot of these drafts, you end up getting Wentz and Stafford, which I generally don't like to draft two quarterbacks, but when you're getting them in the 11th and the 12th round, it's certainly, you don't hate it. You don't hate it. You can feel good about it.
Alex, Evan Ingram, are we buying in?
How can we buy into Evan Ingram? That's another thing when I'm doing this goddamn sheet. It's like the teams that are hardest to figure out, all right, where are these guys going to line up? How do I even project these alignments? When the New York Giants are one of them. It's like, how do you project who's going to be in the slot between Sterling Shepard and Golden Tate, right? What's the projection there? How do you do it, especially when you consider Evan Ingram? I mean, what are they going to do? Just split him out wide? You can't split him out wide all the time unless you take Darius Slayton off the football field. I don't understand why people would be that high on Evan Ingram when we know that, like last year, we never saw a healthy Sterling Shepard, and Golden Tate, of course, was suspended to start the season. We never saw a healthy Sterling Shepard, Golden Tate, Evan Ingram, Darius Slayton, Saquon Barkley all on the field at the same time. That's a lot of mouths to feed. And whenever I'm looking at people who I can pick right there in that one area, how am I going to take Evan Ingram? Whenever you look at the ADPs, like, let me just look at the overall in PPR scoring. So Evan Ingram has an ADP of 71. That's the exact point in time that I need to be taking Marquise Brown, that I need to be taking Cam Akers, that I need to be taking Terry McLaurin, Kareem Hunt, maybe even Keyshawn Vaughn or Darius Geis. I'm not taking Evan Ingram there. That to me feels crazy to take him at the 7th, 8th, or was that the 7th, 8th round turn? That's the 6th. So no, that's at the end of the 6th round. Byron, like, how are we doing that when we can take, you can take Rob Gronkowski later. You could take Jared Cook later. You could take Hayden Hurst. That'll be stepping in for where Austin Hooper left off last year. Our guy, TJ Hawkinson, Mike Gesicki, all these guys, you could take much, much later on. Jonnu Smith. These are big time upside guys. So no, I'm not interested in Evan Ingram. I'll be interested to hear. Are you interested in Evan Ingram? I mean, clearly you brought him up for a reason.
No, I love that we're getting lots of Gronk and Jared Cook. On version 2.5, it was a lot of Gronk. Version 2.6, it's a lot of Jared Cook, who I think people forget Jared Cook had a monster run down the stretch last year. And I'm just beginning to wonder if on the sheet, if Gronkowski and Jared Cook should begin to converge a little bit more. But no, I mean, generally speaking, I think
the sheet's doing natural. I think the sheet is naturally taking care of it for. I think the sheet as of now, ADP is naturally taking care of it for us. Like you said, on 2.5, you were getting a bunch of Gronk. I didn't move Gronk. It's ADP's taking care of that for us. It's like maybe I'm saying I might like getting Jared Cook a little bit later, but it's a great mix. And you're right. You're going to get Gronk, if his ADP starts to fall a little bit, he's going to come right back into focus. So that's beautifully constructed. Like I said, these are observations, but to your point, that's exactly where I want my tight end from in drafts right now for this year. I want it from the
Gronkowski, Jared Cook range, or I want to get it from that Hayden Hurst, TJ Hawkinson area. As a matter of fact, I think you can double up. You can get a Gronk or a Cook, and then you come back with a Hayden Hurst or a Hawkinson. I think, you talk about Jared Cook. I think folks might wonder a little bit how much Emmanuel Sanders could bite into his action a little bit. I think it's a fair concern. None of these guys come without concern, but I'll tell you too, I think I might like Jared Cook over Tyler Higbee at this point, Alex.
Well, that's a kind of a hot take, and that's something where we don't really have to make any changes, right? Because we're getting a lot of. I'll bet you if I ran a simulation right now, I would end up getting Jared Cook. More likely than not, I probably would. But
what do you say we test that at the end of the pod?
That's fine. We could test it. I could test it right now. Let's just run one. I'll go right up here. I'm already in Fantasy Pro, so I'll go to the Draft Wizard and I'll share the screen. And that's the MLB Draft Wizard. Let's see. Let me go to the screen share here.
We spend most of our time.
Okay. Yeah. Worried about the MLB stuff? Yeah. Hate to say. Okay, so I'll start a mock draft here. A PPR 12. It gave me the 6th position. Do you want me to switch the positions of this one?
No, I want you to take the bull by the horns.
I hate the 6th spot. Oh, we'll see what happens. 2.6. If this thing goes sideways on us, that'll be fine because 2.7 is on the way, right? So a whole bunch of testing is about to get started anyway. This is a 12-team PPR league, snake draft, 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 flex. 1 tight end, 2 flex. Composite ADPs from ESPN, Fantrax, RT Sports, Fantasy Football Calculator, the composite best ball average draft positions from FFPC and best ball 10s, and then the pre-draft cues from Yahoo, ESPN, and NFL.com. 2.7 cheat sheet. So we'll start right here, pick it right from the middle, and we'll see what kind of draft. This is for us today. It looks like it'll be a Derrick Henry draft to start. You like that?
You always wonder about that a little bit in PPR, but I think if you take a step back, you have to really like getting Derrick Henry.
I mean, it's like Trashman says. It's like there aren't many that feel safer than he does.
It's a monster pick, dude.
So let's see here. We'll get Miles Sanders here, and then we will have. Looks like we're going to have a wide receiver fall to us with Odell Beckham, like that. So that's a good start, right? Good start. We're going to have a choice here between Le'Veon Bell and Calvin Ridley. Which way would you point me towards taking the player here at pick 4.07?
I would take Bell.
Okay. Let's see if this thing fills us out. It is. It's going to be good to us. It's going to be good to us, Byron. I'm glad you made that decision because we're going to get Tyler Lockett here. This is a great start. I
told you it's humming nicely, man. Crushing these simulations.
It really is.
You don't want to overreact to these notes because it's running so well, but it always creates fun talking points.
We're gonna take Marquise Brown right here. Love that. Hopefully Kareem Hunt will fall. Yes, he's going to fall. I love this team, man, so far. We'll see what happens. Hopefully the Darius Slayton, Keyshawn Vaughn. Yes, they are. So we're gonna have a Darius Slayton, Keyshawn Vaughn decision here. I've been taking Keyshawn Vaughn when I come to this decision because I find that Darius Slayton slips more often than Keyshawn Vaughn does to the next round. It did not happen here on this one, but oh well. Jordan Howard, been getting a little bit of him. How do you feel about that? I mean, in PPR, he's not that much. You think of him as a PPR asset, but that's a team that should improve. They've tried to make some improvements along the offensive line there in Miami. It's not like they have anybody else besides Matt Breida.
Not a horrible guy to have on your bench and your flex as an option if you end up in a bind.
Maybe CeeDee Lamb will fall to the next pick, and sure enough, he did. This team is a team that I'm beginning to absolutely love. I'm not sure we're going to get Jared Cook, Byron. You could have been right here. Maybe we are. Or no, it looks like so. Basically, what we have is a Tyler Higbee, Jared Cook decision, and you're saying in this decision you would rather have Jared Cook.
I want Jared Cook, Drew Brees. Cook finished almost as hot as Higbee did. Granted, not on as many targets down the stretch last year, and I don't think Gerald Everett is going away in Los Angeles.
I've told Byron, or I've told Trashman, just how do you put that Tyler Higbee genie back in the bottle? We've seen it. How do you put that thing back in the bottle? If we get 75% of that,
it's good. If you get 75% of it, you probably get what you get out of Jared Cook. It's a tough call. It's a difficult decision.
Maybe let's try and get Higbee and Cook. Let's try and get Higbee and Cook.
I'm hitching my wagon to Drew Brees.
Well, I got Higbee. Sorry about that. I figured we could get Cook too, but I'm just going with what the sheet says for right now.
It's good to get some variation too.
Okay, Desean Jackson, who I really like for the first couple of weeks. I think he's going to be terrific. Now, here's another thing that keeps coming up, Byron. Aaron Rodgers. I mean, do we at this point do we like Matthew Stafford maybe more than Aaron Rodgers? I'm not sure I could say that I do, but I think it's definitely. I wouldn't shout you down if you did. I don't
think so. I'd rather do is wait and not take a quarterback.
Okay. Well, for the sake of the sheet and for the sake of everybody.
You feel great getting Aaron Rodgers at that point in your draft. I mean.
Yeah. And here in the 14th round, we'll take Denzel Mims. So
monster.
What this team is Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. The running backs are Derrick Henry, Miles Sanders, Le'Veon Bell, Kareem Hunt.
Goodness.
Keyshawn Vaughn. Jordan Howard. The wide receivers are Odell Beckham, Tyler Lockett, Hollywood Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Desean Jackson, Denzel Mims, and the tight end is Tyler Higbee. I mean, guys, it couldn't be simpler. If you follow the 3 simple rules at the top of this sheet of paper, an expert quality draft is guaranteed. The RosterWatch cheat sheet now available at rosterwatch.com. The fantasy football tool that changed fantasy football forever is back only at rosterwatch.com. Just follow the 3 simple rules. An expert quality draft is guaranteed. That's it. 3 simple rules. The RosterWatch cheat sheet only at rosterwatch.com. So hell of a sim there, Byron. So now we've talked about Jared Cook. I guaranteed you that we get him. We had a chance to get him. I decided to take a risk.
I think it worked out okay. We want a little bit of exposure to all those guys right there. That's the pocket. You want to circle back around with your Hayden Hurst, your Hawkinsons. Me personally, I could see me waiting on tight end all the way till I get to Hurst and Hawkinson, but I really, really like that strategy. I think that's looking good for RosterWatch Nation, Alex. The next portion of mock drafts and ADPs I wanted to talk about, Alex, especially as it relates to the cheat sheet, is sometimes I find myself in kind of like rounds 5 through 8 or rounds 6 through 9, wishing that I had one more bite at the apple, one more stab at that wide receiver position. And so it just makes me wonder if maybe relatively speaking, there's some adjustments that can be made from, that vein of wide receivers versus the corresponding running backs that live in that area. And let me start with a couple notes on the receivers, something you and I talked about online. I would like to get Michael to gallop down a couple spots, especially since
I'll move him down as far as you want, dude. I don't want any part of that, dude. I'll move. So that's fine.
In PPR, I think he has to go below Crowder, and possibly to me, it's like Gallup versus Anthony Miller. And since we're getting so much CeeDee Lamb, if Foles starts in Chicago, I think I take my chances on the Golden Sun there. So I might get Gallup down below Anthony Miller. Just punt.
It's already done. Gallup. It's already done for 2.7.
Pre Cam Newton, I was thinking we should make the same move with Edelman. I'm not sure how you feel about that.
We're not going to get Edelman anyway, so it's we can.
I get it. But do you want a little bit more improved chance at a guy like Crowder, maybe by just putting some upward pressure on him by burying a guy like Edelman?
It seems like Crowder's a little bit of a pinch point you keep referencing. Why do you like Crowder?
Just seems like an obviously good play that late in PPR formats. Up there with the Robbie Anderson is gone. I mean, to me, Crowder is he's the preferred wide receiver. I actually think Sam Darnold, we're not waiting on quarterback this late. I actually like Sam Darnold this year too. So I just think as that late in your drafts in PPR, Crowder's a really nice option to help supplement your wide receiver position, especially since we're going pretty running back heavy early under the current economics of the situation. So, you make the executive decision on Edelman versus Crowder and Anthony Miller, but that's kind of my
I'll move Edelman down as much as I'll move Edelman down as much as
The other reason that I like moving Edelman and Gallup down is then by default, it pushes upward pressure on John Brown, who Josh Allen says he thinks is not going to suffer at all after the acquisition of Diggs. And I actually still think John Brown is a good value late. Moving Edelman and Gallup down puts upward pressure on Mike Williams, who I think I would personally like a little bit more exposure to.
Really
late.
I see. I sometimes Mike Williams just falls, and sometimes I'm like, I guess I'll take Mike Williams. I find myself having a hard time painting. I mean, is there a scenario you can paint for Mike Williams that gets you excited?
Yeah, I mean, he's been an improving player every year. He's a good wide receiver. He
didn't improve. He didn't improve from the year. He didn't improve from 2018 to 2019. His touchdowns.
Phillip Rivers. Well, but his touchdowns were an outlier before, and Phillip Rivers regressed terribly. And I know Tyrod Taylor's not necessarily better, but to me, when I look at it, I know Trashman thinks Tyrod Taylor's going to dump it to Keenan. To me, there can be value on both Chargers wide receivers. They've fallen so far. I just look at it in a vacuum. I say, dude, Tyrod Taylor's not a timing and rhythm quarterback. And to me, he's going to go to the high value targets to Mike Williams is the easier. That's the path of least resistance for a player like Tyrod. I guess what I'm saying is I don't necessarily see a monster disparity between those two, and Mike Williams is the player you can draft way later. And I just think it's at the point on both Chargers receivers where there's a little bit of value. So I'm not saying Mike Williams deserves an astronomical rise, but I think he deserves a little more attention than he's gotten. And by getting those two other guys down that we're not going to go in on anyways, it puts a little upward pressure on Mike Williams, and thereby Jerry Jeudy as well, kind of the other wide receiver in that range, Alex, that I personally would like to, see him go up a little bit of spot. I think Jerry Jeudy's in a pretty good situation. To me, if you can like CeeDee Lamb this year, I think you can like Jerry Jeudy, and there's a chasm in ADPs and the difference in those guys right now. And so I see at least a small bit of opportunity on Jeudy. We don't want to do it at the expense of anybody major, but I think when you're talking Michael Gallup and Julian Edelman, you can do it. And then, the other piece of that equation then is to increase at least, a small bit, the exposure to wide receivers in that range of the draft. The corresponding move is to look at reconciling the running backs that live in that same neighborhood in two. And so I guess my question to you, Alex, is the more I look at it, the more I wonder if that DeAndre Swift through Antonio Gibson tier of running backs,
which is a giant tier,
maybe shouldn't go down 3 or 4 spots.
No, that'll fuck the whole thing up, man. I don't think there's any way that we're not getting 3 spots. We are. I just got Jordan Howard. I've gotten Darius guys.
Did you really want Jordan Howard there?
No. Do you know who I'm not getting anymore there? Do you know who I'm not getting anymore there? Is I'm not getting Tevin Coleman anymore, who I was interested in getting around in that area. We're not getting him anymore.
It's not our construction currently. I just think we could use a little more exposure to wide receiver there, and I don't think moving that vein down 3 spots going to do.
Byron, how long have you been making these sheets? You move something down 3 spots.
Long enough to tell you that under the current construction of our draft, that's not going to break anything. As a matter of fact, it on occasion is going to help us pick up an extra wide receiver there. We're already 4 or 5 running backs deep by the time we get to those guys. Now, to your point, and this is how I kind of began the show, the Tevin Colemans of the world, that's a great lead. Look, those players are not plausible for us right now, given our current roster construction versus ADP. But I mentioned what happened, the fallout from the FSGA draft, and it raised a good point. We talked about James White earlier. You just spoke about Tevin Coleman. So I wanted to bring up, this isn't something that we are currently doing. It's kind of actually contrary to our current roster construction right now. But, I saw at the FSGA, there were a bunch of teams that missed on running back early. And I knew from Jump Street, they were all going to be basically screwed at running back as the draft progressed or, once the draft expired. Now, I went back and did an autopsy on that draft, and I noticed there was a couple of teams, and this is a very tough 14-team, draft, There's a couple of teams that missed on running back early that I don't think necessarily saved themselves late, but I thought they targeted some very specific running backs that at least made me feel a little bit better about their rosters, about that zero running back strategy, if for some reason that's what you're looking to employ. I think these are guys we have to talk about too, Alex, because undoubtedly ADPs are going to change over the rest of the summer, which by default will thereby change our current roster construction. And some of these guys may come back into play. So we talked about James White. We talked about Tevin Coleman. I thought I saw a pretty good save from a running back light team in FSGA on Mark Ingram. You know, I don't know that I love his viability long-term, but coming out of the gate to begin the season, he's a guy in round 5 or 6, I think can be a respectable starter for you if you get in trouble. Kerryon Johnson going significantly later than DeAndre Swift and is a player that he's going to be ups and downs all season long, but I think as at least a flex or a pinch running back situation, he's a guy that I would target late if I had totally missed earlier. You mentioned Tevin Coleman. I think Phillip Lindsay, not necessarily so much for PPR, but I haven't totally I'm certainly not bullish on Phillip Lindsay, but I think his ADP is to a point where if you're in a total bind at running back, he's a guy that you can potentially look at. And then Ronald Jones and Latavius Murray, Alex, I feel like are also forgotten guys that had some viability last year that I don't necessarily see their roles changing a whole bunch this year, at least at the outset of the season. And then for different reasons, that same set of running backs, I also, or actually a little bit further down in ADPs in the sheet, the last running back I wanted to mention is that I do think Tony Pollard is being undervalued as a handcuff. He's almost as important as Alexander Madison.
I mean, if that's a good rant, we can just end it right there, man. We got to get on a call, so maybe we should just end it.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right, cool. All right, to everybody on YouTube, thanks so much for tuning in. If you missed any of the show, you can listen back here. Make sure and give it a thumbs up if you could, subscribe, and leave a comment. That really helps the robot genius overlords to help other people to see these videos. So to everybody out there, for Byron, I'm Alex. This is Roster Watch. We love you guys.